How are we doing? Am I still killing time? Or should I get serious now? All right. Have you ever wondered why our history is so limited? You know, they say they found footprints of man right beside dinosaur footprints. They've told us that Homo sapiens have been around for hundreds of thousands of years, and yet we've only got a very short span of history. Well, my next guest has been researching that. He's studied psychics, he's studied historians, he's studied scientists, and he's put it together in probably what is one of the best-selling books the Free American has handled since our inception. Mark Hazelwood, Blindsided, the story of Planet X. Let's give him a hand and bring him up. Thank you, Mark, for coming here. I really appreciate it. Stairs on this. Oh, he's still young. Look at this.
Hold it. I'm not young. I'm a middle-aged grandfather. I'm 45.
A grandfather?
Yeah.
You know, I told my kids, I said, look, when you make me a grandfather, I better look like one. You know? Welcome, Mark.
Well, thank you. He's a little taller than me. The first thing I would like to address for people that would be getting ready for the after times is why I may look a little younger than 45. Something you should all keep in mind. Back when I was 11 years old, I pretty much figured out that I wanted to survive a long time. So I researched why we age for the most part. And I'm telling you, and you may not want to hear this, but it's good information for the after times, and it certainly ties in with Planet X. It has to do with more than what we eat, it's how much we eat. I eat very little. I met with a Dr. Mazzaro that studied rodents several decades ago, and he was keeping them alive a lot longer than what they should, just by taking what they would normally feed them and just cutting it down to just hardly anything. I just nibble. Okay, so that is something to keep in mind when food supplies are very short. Understand that you absolutely can live and energetically a lot more healthy with a lot less food. Now, Planet X. This subject is almost difficult to introduce because what we're talking about here is a planet that when it passes, it creates calamities on Earth just by passing. The crust of the Earth goes through what you would say is tides, similar to the seas. Be like shaking out a blanket. I first did my research of Planet X through the eyes of intuitives or prophecy. I studied perhaps over the years 100 different prophets, probably more, or intuitives in regards to earth changes. Now, I didn't even know when or why this would happen. I just had an interest in this type of earth change prophecy is what you'd call it, really. Along the way, my son, I have a grown son who's made me a grandfather. He had a dream of tidal waves. We were living in Florida. In fact, I'm just getting out of there right now. And within 2 days, I had another dream. So I thought to myself, well, what have I missed? I really want to know why all these intuitives say around this time we're supposed to have earth changes. In fact, I've since discovered there are actually thousands of earth change prophecies all over the planet that basically say the same thing. Now, not all of them certainly know the reason why they're giving these visions or anything, but I did find out. And it was, when I first found out, I'll tell you the truth, the cognitive dissonance that's created by finding this out is such that I rejected it. I mean, even though I'd read about earth changes, I would not even pay attention to this. I thought it was laughable that a planet could come by, that we have another one in our solar system, and disrupt our surface and basically cause all this to happen. The reason being, once you accept this as true, it changes your whole view of the world you live in. It changes all your relationships. It changes all of how you feel about your material goods once you understand this is absolutely coming. So, let me get back a little bit. I went and I found a thread in my study of intuitives and prophecy about this rogue planet or passing comet or star, if you will, that I kind of overlooked the first time. So I took a hard right turn. I got out of the prophecy intuitive range and I started studying ancient history and found out, and I have 34 names for this planet in my book, and since discovered several more, that the ancient cultures around the world all knew about this planet and discussed it in the same terms. They gave it names that were almost akin to God because they had so much respect for what happens when it passes. It basically changes the earth. It causes upheavals planet-wide. So I thought, all right, there must be ecological evidence to support this, and sure enough, I've got 18 pages in my book, and I could have filled my whole book with that. Every 3,600 years, when this planet passes, you can find the ecological evidence. Now, what is the most exacting, telling ecological evidence that we know of? Tree rings. Worldwide, about 3,650 years ago, tree rings were narrowed for several years. Why would they be? Well, when this thing passes, the majority of volcanoes go off. And you have kind of like a nuclear winter. And you don't see the sun for quite some time, and it rains. During the passing, the tail of this, you can call it a comet, you can call it a brown dwarf. It's 4 to 5 times as large as Earth and 20 to 25 times its mass. It treats us like a piece of trash on the side of its road when it goes by. The tail of this sweeps the earth. And there you can go back to your Bible, if you know anything about that, and understand why the waters turn red at the time. There's iron oxide dust that this planet attracts through deep space. It's got such a strong gravitational pull. It's even got little moons that trail it in a row. So this red dust will sweep the earth. And at a certain point, when it gets real heavy, that'll be the time to hit your shelters, because the waters will turn red, the sky will turn red. If you're on the side of the earth in the nighttime, the stars will turn red. In the daytime, the sun will turn red. It pauses the rotation of the earth when it goes past. I'm sure you've heard mythology of the 3 days of darkness, depending on what side of the earth you're on, 3 days of dawn or sunset or daytime. Well, actually, it's not 3 days. It's more like 5 days to a week is what they calculate. Since I've written this book, I've gotten whispers from all sorts of insiders, from observatories and government that know this is true, thanking me for my effort, because they aren't allowed to say anything. In fact, just in this past week, I've been harassed. My family started getting harassed by a guy by the name of Tim Edwards, and him and his friend Jim that post on this large E-group. One of them, the first one, Jim, has been traced by an ex-DOD agent through 4 Washington servers down to Vienna, Virginia, military DOD CIA. Okay, the next day Tim was traced, him and his websites and where he was posting from. Same 4 Washington servers hit a hard block, so apparently they covered that hole. Well, now this guy Tim is writing my dad's girlfriend, I have to be nice here about this, and harassing her, trying to draw a rift between the two, because my dad is a famous musician and he's posting my material on his website, and he wants to try to get him to take that down, because the less you hear about this, the less likely the economy of the world will crash soon. It will crash before the event, but they want to hold it off as far as possible. These guys are engaged in disinformation. Their first level of disinformation is it does not exist at all. Don't worry about it. Their second level of disinformation is, well, if you've done your research like I have, you'll find out it absolutely does exist. But, and this is where Tim Edwards comes in, who he calls himself Tim Edwards. This is actually, as far as I'm concerned, a budget, a crew of people and equipment that are being used to put out disinformation to keep the public's eye away from this. He says, well, I put out information about structures on Mars and the moon and aliens, so I can't be a part of them. They don't care whether you know that anymore. They only want you to keep quiet or keep your mind blank that Planet X is coming. It is the worst case in all of history of genocide, them keeping back this information. This is from a NASA source that was contracting out a dome home, which is the strongest structure known to man, in the upper Midwest. He confided in his friend, the contractor, he was in the military first, went into NASA, that NASA knows two things absolutely. Planet X is real and should pass late May, early June 2003. Now here's their speculation. I would pay close attention to NASA speculation. 2/3 of the population will perish during that time. They're not going to kill you, the New World Order. They're waiting for this event to, and they're keeping it out of your mind so that you will die anyway. That's how they're going about it. They're not going to create nuclear war. They've been getting ready, digging underground facilities for decades for this. They probably got facilities for a million people plus. Not you, more than likely none of you are on that list. I wouldn't want to be on that list. Big money make big mistakes. I don't think when the crust of the earth starts to move like it will, that these underground facilities are going to be safe. You're going to be a lot safer if you pay attention to three things. Number one, well away from the shorelines. Number two, well away from major population centers. And number three, up in the rolling hills. And try to build a dome facility. You can build them for very cheap. I've got several different addresses on a website that I have of domes that you can build for, let's say, just $1,000. You can buy sandbags and sand and barbed wire and make a little dome. They'll be just as strong as any dome that you pay $10,000 for. Which just last week I went to a workshop in Italy, Texas, and learned how to build dome homes with monolithic dome home. And you can buy, you can contract out one of these dome homes for, a small little shelter, let's say $20,000, 20 feet across, excuse me, for about $9,000 or $10,000. Now you will have to finish it off for that price. Now where do I want to go from here? Have you got any questions? Pardon me? Oh, question, Mike? I'm sorry, I don't know how to work this.
He's saying come to the mic for a question.
Okay. No. Oh, I see. Thank you so much. Do you have any questions about what I said?
How does this fit in with Immanuel Velikovsky's writings of the Worlds in Collision?
Okay. Immanuel Velikovsky was a great man who he put out scientific information, I think it was back in the 40s, showing his scientific study that the Earth does not change slowly over a period of time. It changes quickly through cataclysms. The powers that be just blackballed him in the scientific community, and now he's being revered, of course. But anytime anyone introduces something new like this, which was new back then, of course, there's all kinds of egos tied to what is accepted, and he was put down quite a bit. But it does fit right into his work. Now, I am going to be giving a seminar with a physicist up in Toronto, May 4th and 5th. By the name of James McKinney. You can reach that from my website, his website. He's got a new book out called Planet X, Comets and Earth Changes. My website, by the way, is planetx2003.com. Real easy, planetx2003.com. Now, the reason I mention him is because I do not have a scientific background. He does, and he knows all about this. He can tell you more about Immanuel Velikovsky than I can even think about. He can also show you how the celestial mechanics of this type object, Planet X type objects, work in the calamities they would create during passage. So I kind of deflect those scientific questions to him, and thank God he came about, to tell you the truth. He used to be a university professor at Cornell, one of the military establishments, universities. NASA is controlled by the military, and he basically got kicked out for telling the truth. So he's a professor, an independent scientist, which you don't find too many of nowadays, that can confirm this type of situation. Go ahead.
I've heard some talk about the year 2012 and the Mayan calendar supposedly running out then or anything. Do you know anything about that?
Yes. The Gregorian calendar and the Mayan calendar, as far as I understand, do not line up. So we may be, in fact, in the year 2011. They didn't keep time the way we do at this time. Their days were different. Their years were different. Now, let's just say, let's play the devil's advocate here and say, all right, 2012 is it. Well, it could very well be it, in that the first passage is 2003. The history of this is that there's all kinds of settling that goes on afterwards. I mean, you don't have major calamities and earthquakes worldwide and hurricane force winds upwards of 200 miles an hour and water's coming in the shore without settling for several years. And then the planet comes on back by during its elliptical orbit and passes again. This time it won't be as severe. It's supposed to be on the other side of the sun at this time in 2011. So possibly after, let's say, 8-9 years worth of changes, it may be time for the 2012 date to come up and the end of the world as we know it and the beginning of something else. Because I do not believe this world is going to end at all. There may be as many as 90% of the population perish, but the ruins of this civilization, according to my spiritual knowledge, will be that great world that we've been all thinking about and reading about, whether it's biblical text, the 1,000 Years of Peace, or whether it's from Native American prophecy that discuss a time after the shift when people will live like ancient Indians did and be more in tune with themselves and the land and respect themselves and the land more, or whether it's New Age prophecy and you hear things like the vibratory rates of the entire world and its people will be raised such that we'll be in fourth dimension. However way you want to look at it, that is my optimism on this issue. That's why you should not see this event as something to fear. I have a 20-month-old boy, a grandson that I love, and I want to see the world that he creates and watch him. That is very exciting to me. So don't take a defeatist attitude that since the majority of Texas and Florida and California will be underwater, including this area, that you should just throw up your hands and say, forget it. I'm sure there are family that you have and offspring that would certainly appreciate if you took the time to at least find a little vacation place where you'll get away to up in the hills someplace well away from the population centers when things become very obvious. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Do you know how close it's going to pass? Because how close it is will affect how much tides we're going to have or something.
I'm not aware exactly how close it's going to pass. It could be as close as some 15 or 20 million miles, and that would certainly be close enough to cause the havoc that is expected. I am in touch with some people that are working on getting the orbital elements of this thing and finding out exactly how close it'll pass, and this is exactly the kind of information that is getting me in trouble and bringing the powers that be down on me. But let me say again, if I haven't said it before, you don't get the kind of flack I'm getting at this time unless you're right over the target.
There's an excellent article in the Free American of April that addresses this issue. It's by Leo J. Schwartz III. I'm not sure if you read it, but also won't the high magnetic field basically disrupt all communications and electrical service?
Okay, this will not sneak up on you at all. It's not like a Y2K where you're going to wait till the day it comes and see what happens. Or it's not like any planetary alignment that's never caused any calamities in the past and you simply wait till 5/5/2000 to see what happens. This will not catch any of you that have been exposed like you have the first time off guard. 6 months prior to this planet arriving, all amateur astronomers will be able to see it if the powers that be haven't created a larger misdirection than 9/11 to keep you from communicating with each other, and you can't hear about it. But all amateur astronomers should be able to see it as soon as the constellation where it's coming from, Orion, passes from behind the sun in early October. 7 weeks prior to it passing, everyone on the planet be able to see it with their eyes. And let me tell you, first of all, I'm in the fear relief business. I'm not telling you this to get in a state of fear. It will be the people that learn at the last minute that will be in fear. If you all take the time to study this seriously and find your own absolute knowing on this issue, you will prepare, you will get your families in a safe place during the passage, and you will be in a lot less fear because you'll know you've done what you can and done the best job you can to deal with this. So if you don't find out, those are the people that will be in fear. I've been attacked by the powers that be as a fear monger, saying that people are this was just recently, this is part of the email that was sent to my dad's girlfriend's email address, whom they had to glean from going into my own personal email to find. They said, oh, well, you're getting people considering murdering their puppies ahead of time and committing suicide. Well, listen, I tell you what they're doing. They are preventing you from their massive disinformation campaign, and I wonder how many millions of dollars that they've been spending on it over decades, from you finding this out so you can make a decision to put yourself in a safe area so you don't have to have the level of fear that the rest of the people will have whenever they look out over the ocean laughing and partying about this possible planet doing something as it comes in, and then the waves come in and take them out. Because that's what will happen to 2/3 of the population. And I don't care how much I speak, these powers that be should really just leave me alone. There's not that many people out there that even pay attention to this kind of thing, that listen to talk radio, that come to these kind of conventions. Most people are so caught up in their workaday life, they just want to sit down in front of the TV and drink a beer at the end of the day. And if they hear about a little planet at the end of the day, they're not going to pay attention. Even if they see it in the sky, they'll just have a party and think, oh yeah, maybe it'll come, maybe it don't. That's the most of the world. They're not going to hear about this thing. So they should let me and others, without harassing me, speak and let this knowledge out. That's my opinion. Of course, it would collapse the economy of the world a little faster because people would pull all their money out of stocks, because what good are stocks if the infrastructure is gone worldwide? Nothing.
What are some of the? I've heard a lot of different figures as far as the height above sea level.
Oh,
Can you speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a good. I'm sorry. I didn't actually come here with a plan. I mean, I got so much information, so many things. I just thought, well, I'm just going to start to speak. But you should be at least, at 1,000 foot above sea level wherever you go, and don't go up into the high mountains, because the reason why the mountains are there is during past events where. After or towards the end of the shift itself, it takes about 45 minutes to an hour for the shift to happen. It'll be the ride of your life, let me tell you. The tectonic plates hit up against each other and they form mountains instantly. This doesn't happen over a long period of time. That's why you have all these jagged mountains out there. Otherwise they'd be nice and soft and rounded if they were there for so many thousands of years. So you don't want to be in the high mountains where there's a lot of jagged edges. You want to be in the rolling hills, which will help you with the high winds at the time. And if you at all can, try to build a dome structure. This is the strongest structure known to man. I mean, a dome will withstand the worldwide quakes at the time and the hurricane force winds. And don't just think that you can go up there with stored food. Stored food will absolutely get stolen, get used up, or spoil at a certain point. It'll have to happen. Even if it's just get used up, you will not end up with food at a certain point if you just bring stored food. Bring some non-terminator seeds, things that you can use to grow new food. A fishing pole or two. There will be rivers that have fish in them in the after times. Don't expect to go hunting. I mean, everything that can and will be hunted within the first couple weeks after this event. And you don't want to be in the major metropolitan centers whatsoever. Mad Max scenarios will prevail. above all, keep optimistic about this thing. To me, it's just exciting times. I mean, I'm youthful enough and strong enough to look forward to this thing and with excitement in my eye and wondering, what kind of world that my grandchild's going to create for himself, because I'm just going to kick back and watch.
Can you give us a little background about prior passages of this planet and some of the historical names it's had, such as Nibiru or some of the others it's been called by?
That's an excellent question. I'm sorry I haven't mentioned it before. Back in 1976, the man that probably has got out Planet X information more than anyone else is a guy by the name of Zecharia Sitchin. He wrote a book called The 12th Planet. Now, the reason he called it the 12th planet is because the ancient Sumerians had a couple of words for it, the 12th planet and Nibiru. The 12th planet is because the ancient Sumerians, they counted the sun and our moon for whatever reason. So, of course, planet X Roman numeral number 10, would be the 12th planet to them. Nibiru translates into planet of crossing. In other words, it doesn't go around one sun, the normal elliptic, goes back and forth between two suns, which I might want to back up here. We live in a binary solar system. And if you've been paying attention to astronomy the last few years, you'll understand that the majority of solar systems out there are binary, if not 3 or 4 suns. Now, the reason this dark sun, that's our twin, it's dark, that's probably one of the reasons why you're not very aware of it. For the most part, most people aren't. Now, there are many leaks. As far as I'm concerned, there's a civil leaks going on. In fact, I gleaned this diagram from 1987 encyclopedia that showed our dark twin sun, dark star, out towards the constellation of Orion, and put that diagram in my book. And they actually showed the 10th planet too. So the powers that be, they do their best to keep this information out, but if you do your research, you'll find out this is for real. In other words, this twin sun sets up the stage for Planet X's orbit. It doesn't go around just the sun. It goes back and forth between the two suns. And instead of, taking a year or 3 or 5 years, it takes 3,600 years for it to do so. One of the names that I've gotten from a New Zealand text as of late, it's not in my book, it's called the Destroyer. Another one would be Gabriel's Fist. Another one would be the Winged Globe. Now, the Winged Globe, that would be a very descriptive name for Planet X. In other words, when it comes through the solar system, it comes through and it crosses the ecliptic. And when you see it, it'll look like it'll be on fire with wings. But those will be the plasmatic discharges from this planet, which is one of the reasons that it can affect Earth just by passing instead of striking. See, NASA, their information is to get you thinking about only comet collisions. Well, I'm telling you, you don't need a collision for the kind of calamities we're talking about. This is very much a worst-case scenario, just a passage of Planet X, as far as the amount of calamities it will and can create with each passage. And if you just look at the ecological evidence and nothing more, and maybe take one look at Zecharia Sitchin's book and understand it's 3,600 years, you'll understand the last time tree rings worldwide was 1650 BC were narrowed significantly. And there's worm coatings on rocks around the entire world where, for whatever reason, the way it affected the Earth last time, the seas dropped 15 to 20 feet. Of course, Antarctica is only less than 4,000 years old. Niagara Falls is only less than 4,000 years old. All these major Earth changes happened 3,600 years ago. If you just had that in mind, you think, my God, it's ready. Now, let me get back to Zecharia Sitchin. Zecharia Sitchin had a real good friend by the name of Dr. Harrington he worked with, and they actually worked out the orbit of Planet X together, comparing it with what the ancient Sumerian knowledge had. Dr. Harrington is no longer with us. I consider him a martyr, having been knocked off because he wanted to get this information out. Zachariah Sitchin, who's still alive, is now doing his best, because I think he's under the gun, and I point that out in my book, of trying to naysay the 2003 date. So he's a great man. He did his research, uncovering through archaeology the ancient Sumerian tablets and translated them, but you don't need to go to him for any other information except for finding out Planet X is real.
As far as the Earth changes that are happening right now with the poles melting and so forth, could that be caused by this planet moving in right now?
I'm so glad you guys are asking questions. I mean, these are some of the most important things that I just missed because I got up here and I didn't jot a few notes down. But I'm relying on you guys to help me, and I thank you very much. The approach of Planet X portends many changes in our solar system. Planet Earth is not being singled out at all. Jupiter and Neptune have already gone through 40 to 50% magnetic pole reversals at this time. Saturn has lost one of its rings as of late. It is on a tilt compared to what it was before. Venus and Saturn and the moon are all brighter than they ever have been. Mars is losing some of its water and its poles. Its poles are melting. There's an unprecedented dust storm going on there that they've never seen before. The atmospheres are thickening on Mars. In fact, the moon has suddenly grown an atmosphere about 6,000 feet they're calling natrium. The sun is going through, I mean, it's like a popcorn popper, is going through a cycle that they've never seen. It's supposed to end the normal 11-year cycle in the year 2000, and now it's just continuing on. The CMEs, the coronal mass ejections, are higher than ever. In fact, we're supposed to get hit within a few hours here with a full coronal mass ejection here that just happened within the last 24 hours because a small comet went by, and this triggered this ejection of material from the sun. In the last 20 years, Dr. Dmitriev has found out, this is a scientist working in Russia, they won't let this information out here, but it's leaking through. Like I said, there's a civil leaks about this information. From the mid-70s to the mid-90s, the uptick in seismic and volcanic activity has increased 400 to 500%, and that's not counting the last 8 years, which is basically the greatest part of the uptick. The whole of the weather changes that have been blamed on global warming or El Nino or something all have to do with the approach of this planet. And in fact, there's ancient history foretelling the last 7 years prior to the passage we will get the major weather changes that we're experiencing now. The volcanoes going off in the Congo, the mega earthquake in India last year that killed 50 to 100,000 people, according to the defense minister in India. And by the time the powers that be got the information at the end of the year, they had pared that down to 12,000, which is just letting you know, I'm sure you guys know what's happening with the whitewash media. So, yes, there's a little bit going on as the approach of this planet. And by the way, physicist, master of science James McKinney explains in his book exactly how the plasmatic universe is interconnected. All the planets are interconnected with electricity. The solar winds are bringing plasma into our solar system. There's an ionosphere that surrounds the entire solar system. There used to be 93 million miles thick. It has now increased in just the last few years 1,000%. That's plasma electricity that surrounds us like a small balloon might surround an object inside of it. Were you? Oh, you're just putting that up to record. I thought you were raising your hand. Are there any other questions? I'm sure there's something I missed.
How long from the beginning of the events to the end of the events where you can basically come out of your domes and start your life?
Well, the worst of the events should happen within 1 hour. I mean, if you're up in the hills or well away from the shorelines of some country, I would wait, at least 3 days for the sloshing to stop. I don't know. there's a possibility that some of the air may be contaminated because of destruction of certain infrastructure that isn't taken care of, like nuclear facilities and all kinds of different things that they store around in military establishment. Also, the tail of the comet, and you can call it a comet because it acts like a comet. It's on a cometary orbit, even though it's, from what I understand, a brown dwarf. That iron oxide dust, I don't think you want to be breathing that in. That could, in fact, kill you if it's concentrated enough. So you may want to consider an air filtration system inside your dome for a few days before you venture out. I don't know, you probably could just look outside and see what's happening if you're inside. Now listen up though, the Indians, there are accounts of the last passage, how they survived. I mean, some of them just went up to the hills and laid down in a gully and covered themselves up with wood and, you know, and dirt for a little while during the worst of the shift, and they were fine afterwards. So it's not like you need a lot of money. I mean, you could deal with this in a very low-tech way to survive. I mean, just as long as you can survive the water mainly, because that's the worst part of the event. Sorry.
I arrived a little late, so this may be repetitive.
Oh, that's, I'll probably think of something different, so go ahead.
Did you cover the part about the lightning bolts that may have created the craters on the moon?
No, I haven't got into that yet. That's probably a scary part. I don't know if I should. In fact, James McKinney could probably cover that a lot better than I can, and I really urge you to listen to him whenever you can on the radio. We're going to be doing things together. This is this physicist scientist that I'm picking up information from as good as I can. Like I said, I don't have a scientific background, but there have been observed on Neptune, I believe it was, one of the moons, there was actually a plasmatic discharge etching a groove into the planet. I mean, this is how much plasma and electricity is coming into our solar system right now, that this kind of thing happens. And when this planet passes, part of the wing globe thing is the plasmatic discharges. I mean, if you got a dome home underneath one of these plasmatic discharges, I mean, it ain't going to help you. Because it could actually dig a groove into the planet in certain spots. You never know where. As deep as the Grand Canyon. All right, I've said it. Now go on to something else. Have you got a question?
Yes. You talk about this iron oxide that possibly falling from it. Has there been traces of that in core samples when you drill down through the earth, say near the surface? Would there be 3,600-year rings where you would find samples of this stuff, or in coal beds that are laid down on top of one another? Would there be a 3,600-year time period between these coal beds?
That's an excellent question. Very, very deep question, and I can't answer you. I don't know. I've never heard about that. That would be something I would pay attention to in the future if I'm listening to different knowledge comes, because I get so much information sent to me all the time. I only have time to even deal with a third of it, and then try to put out half of that towards the people that are listening to me on my websites. But the ecological evidence is clear for the last passage. I don't know that it contains the iron oxide dust. I mean, I would look towards, just off the top of my head, the Bible for some of those stories of the waters turning red and the Red Sea parting, and all this has to do at a time when these calamities are happening.
David Lanos, license number 041802. Your lights are on.
Of course, we have a commercial. Commercial break here. I have a great group of people who put on this this entire exhibition here. Clay Douglas, and he does carry my book. It's probably the best-selling book that he has, and he says that after I speak, I'll be signing books over here in case anyone's interested in this minor subject.
I have another question.
I want to back up here. The reason I wrote this book, by the way, is because of fear. And I want to tell you, it had nothing to do with the calamities. When I developed a certain level of clarity on this situation and understood that this information wasn't being put out in a palatable manner. In other words, I gleaned this information from 100 different sources. I paid thousands of dollars for books and read thousands of pages on a website and got the best in bits and pieces and put it into a book and realized I could go on and do that for another 2 years before the calamity, so I had to put it out at one time. Well, the reason I'm saying that is, the reason I wrote this book is because I felt that the different sources that I were getting from were not presenting it properly, and that frightened me. It put the onus on me. I never wrote a book in my life and thought, hold it, I more than likely could write a book and present this in a clear fashion so where someone who is just first being exposed to it could get up to speed without having doing all the research I did. That had not been done prior to me doing it, from my understanding. Now, there may be a book or two out there I haven't uncovered yet that has done that, but I'm not aware of it. So I did this because of a spiritual pressure on me, a fear that if I lived through the after times and thought that I could have been possibly responsible for getting this information out, and those people that heard that information could make the decision to prepare and save themselves, if I didn't do that, that guilt would be on my head. That's the fear that drove me. I could care less about the calamities. The fear of not doing my job. That was the job that, for whatever reason, was put, or I put it on myself once I reached that certain level of clarity, knowing that this is a fairly simple subject. It's not rocket science. We got a 10th planet. It comes by. Every 3,600 years it causes earth changes when it goes by. How hard is that? But you need to put some detail in it. You need to do it in an organized fashion. And you need to draw a mosaic from all the different information sources to make this absolutely clear. And you need to throw a joke in or two, because this subject calls for a little comic relief. I'm telling you, I did that in my book. And I did that because it is such a serious subject. What was your question? I'm sorry.
Okay, I just want to back you up with, I heard you on Art Bell, by the way.
Okay.
And as far as later, like a couple weeks later, Sean David Morton was on, and he was talking about when we get into this war over in Afghanistan, when we really get into this war, we're going to, and he talked about, I think, it was sometime maybe in the fall or winter of this year, maybe a little later, that we're going to be looking to the skies. There's going to be something going on in the skies that's going to catch the whole world's attention. Now, no, I just wanted to back you up on that, but also, now I've also been reading some information, and then I don't want to get too weird or anything, but I've also been reading some information. I'm curious if you have taken this in or whatever, that it could possibly be a spaceship that causes this. Have you heard anything like that?
Oh yeah, I'm fully aware of everything that's going on in this, in and around this subject. Not everything, but a lot of things. And one of them is what I consider to be disinformation. In other words, if you view this object as some sort of Star-Trek spaceship globe that is being driven around by some aliens, then you're not going to pay attention to the information. So I feel that part of the powers that be disinformation campaign is to go in within the spiritual community and create a name for yourself and put this kind of information out that aliens are driving this spaceship, and it may or may not come depending on what they decide at the last minute. I mean, it just irks me to death to hear this kind of stuff. But there's a reason for it. They don't want people to take this seriously. I put that on my website. They want you to feel this whole subject is completely ridiculous. They want to make fun of you. If you call up NASA and you ask about any ridiculous subject you can think of, they'll be courteous and they'll give you information. If you ask about Planet X, they immediately start to ridicule you. You got them in a sore spot. Pardon me? I'm sorry, I'm not hearing up here. What did she say?
But do you feel like there can be life on the planet? Can there be other life forms just like there are on this planet? Can it be carrying people?
Okay. I'll answer that as honestly as I know. I'm aware of all the stories from ancient antiquity about this planet. Some of those stories talk about a large humanoid species that live on this planet, or live on one of its moons, or hop off of it and travel with it, or come down at a certain point and they're calling fallen angels, etc., etc. I'm also aware of the disinformation that has been going on here in the Western world in terms of alien knowledge. So I figure that the majority of the public out there that I'm trying to get to are pretty much brainwashed into thinking aliens don't exist. So, since the focus of my book is Planet X is absolutely real, inbound, going to pass in 2003, causes calamities with each passage, I chose not to discuss the alien issue in my book. Because it is not an important issue in my opinion. Whether these stories are true or not are largely irrelevant. The fact is it causes calamities with each passage, and that is what is relevant. Prepare, get ready for that. Whether there are aliens on there, I'll personally tell you honestly, I believe there are. Based on the ancient writings from Samaria. I don't believe that they're a threat. I don't think they're going to do anything but keep on their home planet and watch the devastation as they go by. They're supposed to be large humanoids, about 15 feet tall. And from my understanding, they may be technologically more advanced than us, but they are not as spiritually advanced. In other words, my spiritual belief is we are ready for graduation on this planet. For the people that survive, we're going to go on to a better existence. Very similar to the form we have, we don't have to die to get there, a higher vibratory rate, if you will, a spiritual fourth dimension, whatever it is. Our planet will very shortly, because of these changes and other spiritual influences, be part of that new higher vibrational community, if you will, if you want to talk New Age or just Native American. Is going to be a simpler, better, more connected time with the Earth. I don't feel that the humanoids on Planet X are ready to graduate, so we're ahead of them. Anunnaki is what they're called, by the way, in case you, and the Neofilm would be when they used to be there, according to the stories, they used to be here, and they copulated with Earthlings, and Neofilm would be the combination of Anunnaki and human. Now, Zechariah Sitchin seems to think they really played with our genetics and created us. I don't believe that at all. I think they're believing some ancient disinformation from the Anunnaki used to control us when they were here, but they don't have any desire, as far as I'm concerned, to even bother with us anymore. I really don't like to get into that subject because it goes into the realm of strange, and this planet being a part of our solar system is not strange. But maybe some of you are awakened to the reality that there are aliens out there, and maybe you're not. I can't be worried about that one way or other. This won't sneak up on you. You'll see all of these things coming to a head very shortly, within a few short months. California, I fully expect to have their mega quakes prior to this passing, so that should be a little clue. Or some of the volcanoes up in Washington State, around that area, should go off. I'm sorry, what's your question?
I've got two questions now that you went on with that.
Okay.
First of all, I really admire your research and your commitment to putting this out. I'm looking forward to reading your book. I really do. That's not easy to do.
I get it from both spectrums. The people that thank me, and the disinformation people at the DOD who say I'm involved in a scam and trying to get into your pockets and steal your money. I mean, I get this from them.
I'm
okay,
sure
so I get on either side of the spectrum.
One of my questions is the extensive cover-up. I happen to have talked to enough people. I believe the UFOs are out there. Why they are, what they are, I don't know. I don't think this planet is. My question, though, about that is that since the government's trying just as hard to cover up all of the UFO information as they are about the planet, I wonder if there's any connection with the aliens maybe hoping to help us in dealing with this or not. My second question...
Okay, I'll get into the alien issue.
Okay. My second question is...
Can I deal with that question first?
Okay.
Because I don't even know if I'll remember your second question.
No, that's fine.
Just keep it in mind. From my understanding of the alien issue, the reason one of the reasons why you don't hear about our dead sun, our stars, because it sets the stage too well for Planet X's orbit. Okay, and the other thing that the powers that be are keeping out of your mind, trying to brainwash you, is the aliens don't exist. The aliens have been giving us hints. If you go to any UFO conference and look around at the books, every 10th book will be about Earth changes, about the visions that were given them from aliens. They're trying to warn us. I don't know, how much help they could actually give us or allowed to give us. I'm not really an alien buff or anything, but I feel that if they were allowed to, if the military industrial complex actually let the UFO information out, it would be that much closer to you understanding that Earth changes are imminent, because they've been warning us for years, according to a lot of material out there. So what's your second question?
My second question is, there are a number of groups out here who are talking about the Galactic Federation and how if we're going to spiritually survive, we need to figure out how to do what's necessary to unlock the rest of our DNA that isn't functioning, and at that point somehow arise above the level that we are now when all this time comes. Any thoughts about that?
From my understanding of the esoteric spiritual side of things, which is what you're asking there, that whatever changes happen in us genetically, physically, mentally as a result of the passage of this planet will happen naturally. It's really, if we're there, we're going to be there, and we're going to change, and it's going to be a good change as far as I can see. That would be my answer.
You talked about massive energy hitting the moon or other planets and making pockmarks and just tremendous energy forces. Have you heard anything about the possibility of the use of HARP to either challenge this thing, to put it off orbit, or either to use HARP in conjunction with earthquakes or volcanoes to create mass hysteria for another purpose?
I don't really have a lot of information on HARP, but I know that HARP is being used in certain circles as a disinformation tool to say this or the other. I don't really pay real close attention to it. I mean, to tell you the truth, I don't really pay too close attention to what's happening in the news at all. I mean, all of it to me is trivial compared to this up-and-coming event. And whether the powers that be are starting a war here or curtailing your rights there, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, having my roots in the spiritual knowledge of this, the powers that be are not going to be allowed to put in their plans of a one-world government using the calamities as a catalyst to do so. That the opposite will happen. They will perish, be held away from the good people that are helping each other, communities, and that is simply a belief. I wouldn't put that in my book, because like I said, I tried to make it as palatable as possible for the largest group that would be willing to pay attention to it as possible. But I do have a lot of views and knowledge on the periphery of this this Planet X passing again. Well, maybe the 10 minutes are up, huh? Anyone else, real quick?
You touched on a little bit, we're kind of aware of the different people that seem to disappear after they are involved with genetics or certain things. And you mentioned one, I heard somewhere on shortwave that 2 or 3 very well-known amateur astrologists, and they're amateurs, but they're noted for some of their findings, have mysteriously disappeared or met their death, their demise. It seems like when you get into something controversial, as an amateur or professional, you're at risk of wandering off or being. Yeah. Have there been other people that have been lost to the cause?
Yeah, several people. I mentioned only one in my book. Probably the most well-known would be a Vatican source. The Vatican is fully aware of what is to come. They have ancient text that pretends and identifies wormwood, when it's supposed to come. They have an observatory owned in Arizona, and they've been looking at it. Father Malachi Martin spoke in 1997. He's a triple doctorate, had the Pope's ears, high up in the Catholic Church, Vatican if you can be, and very shortly thereafter, he met his demise. I've talked to my son about our mortality. My son and I, we both agree that getting this information out is more important than either of our lives. I've sat down and had that talk with him. And we both agree that and understand what it means for me to continue to do this, and watched how the powers that be have escalated, and how now they're targeting my family and going after them with harassing them. And that's just happened the first time in this last week. Although there's been a whole long list prior to that, but never to that level. So I don't know. And to tell you the truth, I would be proud to die getting this information out, to tell you the truth. I would, and I wouldn't care. And I'm going to still continue to speak up. And
let me ask one last question for you. I was asked to find out if you have any information, if you know what Vladimir Putin had, the comment that he made about this.
You know what? That's something that I'm so glad that you let me answer. This is a real key part of a major leak that got out. September 13th, 2000, Reuters news service wire, and Andrei Shukshin from the Moscow news service office of Reuters reported that President Vladimir Putin and the parliamentary leaders had formed a commission to deal with what they called the 2003 problem. They expected, and they said this, a massive population shrinkage. They expected a string of calamities. Now here's what they were worried about and what they stressed, so you get a feel for how they think. They were worried that Russia may not exist as a country afterwards. Andrei Shukshin was contacted from a wealthy businessman in Germany that I've been in touch with, and asked why he thought this would happen. He said he couldn't pry anything out of the leaders. So he came up with 3 reasons himself: aging population, aging infrastructure, and bank loans due that time. None of them fit the original disclosure. So several articles were written afterwards to kind of play down the first one that elaborated on his speculation. And he fully admitted it was just his speculation. He didn't know. Now I'd like to back up. A man by the name of Bruce J., I'll say his name is, called me a few months ago from Germany. He's a businessman in Canada, a very wealthy, connected businessman. And he said that his good friend, a physicist, 66-year-old physicist, attended a meeting in Russia with a group of scientists discussing the inbound planet. I feel this meeting is what led to the parliamentary leaders disclosing this on open mic during one of their sessions, and Andrei writing this news wire. Also, this same man, being a conservative man as he was, even after calling me up, having found my website, and having this friend who he believed what he said, still was not about to change his operations, affecting so many different people who work for him and his family, and going into a survival mode, which he is in now. He decided to contact several observatories. And the first one he chose was an observatory, a large one in St. Petersburg, Russia. He was ready to put out big dollars to contract out to find Planet X. When he first called him, he said, listen, you got to talk to the guy in charge of new planets. So they sent him over to the guy in charge of the new planets. He said, there's no need. We've been watching it for 3 years. And we're very worried about the calamities it'll cause when it passes. And they knew, they've been watching it long enough, they knew it was going to pass in 2003. They also had a picture of it that he started negotiating for. But all along, stupid me was telling people on the internet all about this. I had a group of some 2,500 people that I used to be with, but they're so dominated by the CIA disinformation, I left that group. I won't even talk on there anymore, because the lady who forms the group allows all these disinformation people to attack me and the information. I just don't want to argue with them anymore. But somehow, and I'm going to learn how very shortly from a group of people I'm going to see shortly, they contacted the observatory, these CIA, military, DOD people, contact the observatory, and at the last minute they bowed out of their negotiation for a picture of Planet X because of pressure they were receiving. So he went on to an Asian observatory and told them what he'd known about this 10th planet. And they got back to him a few days later and were very apologetic that they didn't know anything, that they found it, and they were very shocked. So I don't know how many observatories that he contacted after that. I'm fully aware that he somehow got information from the Vatican Observatory in Arizona, which, why did the Vatican need an observatory? Well, it's all to do with Father Malachi Martin, what he was saying about this planet coming in 5 to 10 years in 1997. He said 5 years at first, and then he said quickly said 10 years. Anyway, that's it. I really can't. I'm sorry. I've got to go. I'm being directed, and I guess I've spoken long enough, and thank you very much. That's one of the key pieces of evidence to me. So many different people all over don't know anything about this, but they say they had these visions, they had these dreams.